You're tuned in to Reimagine 2021, version 11, the #1 virtual crypto and blockchain conference. In this upcoming section of Reimagine, our panel of guests and industry experts look at what has driven DAOs into the mainstream over the last year.
What barrier do you currently see with DAOs that's keeping them from going mainstream?
I would say 2, maybe 3 different things. On the very, very top level, there is, and this is super, super high level, there is a corporate governance, corporate organizational barrier that's keeping them from going mainstream. We have some great developments in Wyoming around the Wyoming DAO LLC law that allows you to use the same liability shields that big corporations use to protect their fat bank accounts, to be able to protect the members inside the DAO. And that's super valuable. But what we have, I mean, that only happened 2 or 3 months ago, July 1st. And so we don't have a long case study, or we don't have case law or experimental evidence about how that will actually work. We just know it's a good idea to go down that path. Other things that are keeping us from mass adoption. It's really difficult to walk into somebody who they have always lived their life thinking about a 9-to-5 job. Their parents thought about a 9-to-5 job. Their parents' parents thought it. It's multi-generational. The mindset is, I have to go to work. I'm gonna grab my briefcase, put on my hat, kiss my wife, walk out the door, right out of 1950s, leave it to Beaver, and go to work. And then come home at the end of the day, and then I'm done. The DAO mental framework is very, very different. For me, and what I look at with all the DAOs on Harmony, the first thing I say is, you're not married to one DAO. We are non-monogamous when it comes to DAOs. We're all about polyamory, right? Like, I can be in love with this DAO and that DAO and this DAO and that DAO. And that concept already has some problems, some complications, both from a legal mindset as well as from how I work. Legally, most of the corporations that you deal with as an employee, you have a fiduciary responsibility. DAOs are different, especially if they've been organized there in Wyoming, where their legal of duty that's owed to other people in the DAO and other DAOs is good faith and fair dealing, which means that I have the ability to have what historically have been called conflicts of interest when I'm inside of a DAO. So if I'm inside of, let's say, Sam's DAO, and I'm doing something that's competitive against somebody else's DAO, that's okay if they both know that I'm part of both DAOs. I have issued good faith. I'm dealing fairly with my community. But the mental model is still broken, because we still think about things as though I'm going to a 9-to-5 and I'm gonna punch my punch card. So those are 2 pretty good ones. And it's just the fact that it's not socially acceptable yet to say I work in a DAO, because people don't understand what that means. I work in a DAO, I get paid in crypto. Who are you? Like, what sort of science fiction novel did you come out of? It is the future. I really highly believe, and you can see this traditionally in employment, where our grandparents worked at the same company for 40 years. Our parents would only work at the same company to 5 to 10 years. Our children are not even gonna work at the same company. They're gonna work at 4 or 5 different DAOs. Like, that is the progress. And this technology is what's making it possible.
So lastly, what needs to happen? What is the solution for DAOs to really go mainstream?
DAOs going mainstream is basically gonna require, well, let's put it this way. What needed to happen for streaming to become mainstream, right? The whole streaming wars, your Netflixes and your Disney Pluses and all the other plus programs. And what happened was those organizations released this content that was magnetic. House of Cards dragged people to Netflix. People subscribed just for that thing. Same with like Daredevil or Mandalorian on Disney Plus. That same thing needs to happen in DAOs. There has to be something that drags a population to the DAO because of whatever it is that becomes magnetic. Now, I'm a little bit more of a visionary than probably my close companions and the people in my life would prefer. But the idea is I want to have something practical. That when somebody says, hey, what is it you do? And I talk to them about a DAO, they're like, oh, I want to be part of that. It's like that's what we did with Mandalorian. That's what we did with House of Cards. We would talk about that show and everyone's like, oh, I want to watch that too. And so they would sign up for Disney Plus. They'd sign up for Netflix. And so that's what we need, is that product, that one thing that then changes everybody's mindset and says, ooh, what about me?
There's a lot of things that resemble DAOs already, right? Any online forum, I think that in itself is kind of looks like a DAO to me, right? People are contributing their insights. Any kind of Reddit thread, there are moderators that protect the speech or the activity going on. There's people that contribute the activity going on, and there's people that create the platform on which the activity is going on, right? Reddit itself, they're already going pretty crypto, right? But I think that in itself, like any type of forum you see where it's not just about earning value, but about earning digital reputation, right? Everyone wants to have like 5 or 6 stars on the forum and saying this guy's been an OG since 2015 in the altcoin talk or Bitcoin talk Reddit, right? I think that's pretty interesting in itself. Another example is just that Waze app, right? The map app that people will go and say, here's a pothole, here's a police officer, here's this and that, right? Where my contribution is adding value to other people that use this app, where I don't get any proceeds from that, not even a point. I don't get any Waze points I could redeem for cash. So if Waze and what they created was meant to be, or was created as a DAO instead, I think it would make a lot more sense, right? So it's really about getting people comfortable with the fact that their contributions can also get them something in return. Probably going to start with assets, but also digital reputation is very, very important in the age of NFTs. So yeah, we'll really see how this evolves over time.
And what's sort of preventing DAOs from going mainstream right now?
Again, legal. That's one to say, because every country's got a different jurisdiction, and like we want blockchain in the decentralized world like to include everyone, and so that's like the biggest hurdle. So I really see honestly probably emerging markets maybe even leading the way on some of these things, like like how a lot of emerging markets have skipped the personal computer and gone straight up to like smartphones or cell phones and that kind of stuff. I think a lot of them will skip traditional company structures and go to DAOs.
I think for DAOs to go mainstream, that's a really good question, because I think they're going to be sort of a primitive in the crypto world for a long time. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see more DAOs eating into Web 2.0 companies. Right now it's fertile land in Web 3.0, and as this starts to grow, Web 2.0 companies will say, hey, we want to compete too, or Web 3 companies will say that, and we'll start seeing just Web 2.0 companies get demolished because the incentives are totally different. They're not able to compete in the same way and organize with the community. And at the end of the day, like your company is, mainly valued by the community around it. So I think it's going to be a very interesting process how these sort of bleed into the Web 2.0 world, and sort of people take notice and say, oh wow, these really are very competitive and very interesting.
The most important thing for DAOs to come into the mainstream is to get some regulatorily recognized structures. They need to be incorporated into LLCs. They have to have rules and structures. Their governance tokens are ultimately look like securities and need to be registered as such. So there needs to be a structure that supports that, and we have to recognize that DAOs in some ways will look like digital enterprises, and in some ways will look like co-ops or consortia. So there's a lot of work to bring that into kind of a model that we understand, but I think once that happens, it'll be incredibly positive for the industry. And of course, the thing that we see over and over again is we're ready to serve those enterprises sooner than the regulators really are. So we want to try to figure out how we kind of collapse that timeline.
So SKALE is a DAO, right? The smart contracts that govern the network, that control the economic parameters and inflation and fees and all these things, they actually need to be upgraded through a decentralized multi-sig contract, okay? And there'll be decentralized voting that happens later this year. And so we're believers in that the property of SKALE, the code is open source and it's owned by everyone. And it's owned by anybody who has a SKALE token. Wow. And the servers, SKALE Labs, the foundation behind SKALE in Europe, neither one runs a single node in the network because we really believe in decentralization. But you're seeing DAOs work really effectively now across different infrastructure products. Now we're seeing them operate in NFTs and different groups that are behind blockchain initiatives. And I think we're literally at the very early stages of seeing DAOs have an impact in the world.
And what do you think is going to be required for them to go even more mainstream?
I think DAOs are incredibly misunderstood, just like the term NFT. Now NFT is an understood thing, even though it's still very misunderstood, but it's come a long ways in the last year. DAOs as well are misunderstood and kind of seen as this like crazy science fiction experiment, but all it is just, it's very simple. DAOs are an act of removing a centralized controller to a system, and instead putting in a set of rules everyone can read openly and agree to, that then act as a coordination tool. And when you do that, you just bring way more value to users and workers. And that's why I believe that user-owned marketplaces and worker-owned marketplaces will absolutely dominate centrally controlled marketplaces.
Okay, yeah, it's like a lot of people just put trust in the software, so there's going to be loopholes and that kind of stuff. So we're figuring out like stuff with blockchain now, like would it be Solidity, all these different languages out there, like they're new languages. There's one language that a smart contract language that I really like. It's called Reach out there right now. So Reach is a JavaScript smart contract language. It's got a lot of things built into it, like I would want to believe formal verification of code and some of these things that may not exist in Solidity. What's cool with Reach, again, it's JavaScript pedigree, so like Web 2 people, like it's easier for them to get into it. And any blockchain that Reach supports, which is like I guess Algorand and Ethereum and Conflux now, you can do one smart contract and like pretty much one-click deploy on all those. It makes it a little bit more complicated than that, but it makes it really easy to just do work once and then work with a ton of chains out there. And I know they're adding more and more chains as it exists today. And they're actually at the conference too. And I think we're actually doing a panel with them in a couple hours as well. So it's pretty cool stuff out there. Like, like even just like this, like the fundamentals, the languages and what, the programming languages, like are really going to really bring it up.
So first of all, there is a lack of DAO itself. So let's say you want to participate in some DAO, but should be something that you're interested in, right? So I guess in this sense, the stop is not many DAOs now. It's very few actually. So DAOs, very few of them are in place. So probably this in the sense stops, but again, like I don't think that it's something that everyone should be in the DAO. It's not like NFTs, because NFTs, it's like digital content or like some IP that everyone has some posters at least in their room. So it's just they buy in these IPs. In the sense, NFT could be interested for like very huge audience. But DAO, it's governance, just participating. It takes energy from you. You should like think about this, make decisions. Usually it's actually a job to make decisions, and usually it's like high-paid jobs. And now, so you have some job. I mean, in mainstream audience guys, they do have something to do each day. So it should be some reason why they enter in the DAO and taking more responsibility for themselves. So yeah, it's not like it should be mainstream. It's kind of, you can have a DAO for your local community for some reason, because you have to, I don't know, do some renovation in your house and co-living or something. So you can launch the DAO, like collect money and then have some voting what to do. So that's cool. So if we're like thinking about this usage for the DAOs in very like basic things. So I guess now what is stopping is just there is no tooling for this. There is no like mobile app. People wouldn't use nowadays. They wouldn't use anything if it's not in mobile. So I guess it should be like nice mobile app and nice kind of free clicks DAO generator or something. So there is no tooling right now. Like DAOs is very, very early.
I think there needs to be, kind of basic tooling, that needs to happen where you don't need to be a smart contract forensic specialist in order to deploy a DAO, where you feel like you can deploy a DAO in a very safe environment. And there's like safety net there in case things go wrong. So there needs to be a little bit more tooling to kind of enable that. I think that DAOs, I think there needs to be a killer DAO, right? Just like a killer app where there's a massive organization that is maintained, shown growth, success, broken through mainstream adoption, whatever project they're working on, and that will kind of set the path for other DAOs to follow. I don't think we've seen that yet. I think there could be some seedlings of successful DAOs in the future. It'll be interesting to see in 3 to 5 years. I think the next big project, the Coinbase of crypto could be a DAO, right? Where it's completely decentralized.
Shapeshift is
and that's an interesting
reversing.
example, right?
Yeah.
They went from a
corporate structure
based in Panama to shifting to a DAO. Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think that we'll probably see a lot more of those, especially protocol companies, right?
Native to crypto.
Exactly.
Blockchain.
I think the DAO will have to be for something that the mainstream cares about. For one, it's very unlikely the first DAO that goes mainstream is going to be for Ethereum EIPs or something. That seems very unlikely. But once there is a mainstream group that cares about something, maybe this is a game that's run by a DAO, for example, or a social network that's run by a DAO, there's a lot of options for where it could show up. Then you have the question of how do you set up structures and frameworks so that this isn't just 100,000 people in a Discord server and just talking about some governance proposal that one of those 100,000 people made. We'll have to figure out those structures, but once we have figured, there'll be so much opportunity for experimentation that I'm very excited to see which of those structures work and don't, and that will, at least some of those will be able to go mainstream, I think.
My thesis is that we were talking about NFTs earlier, and if you think about it, like NFT communities are kind of a DAO in a way, right? If you hold punks, for example, basically a separate Discord for punks holders, and that community is basically like a DAO in that sense. So I think actually you need some sort of a crypto gateway drug like NFT, which really gets people into the concept of DAO without really knowing that they're kind of getting into DAO. But as they just kind of talk to their other fellow holders and talk about their interests, that kind of becomes a DAO in itself. And then they will kind of start to realize, oh, these are some of the benefits of DAO. So I do think that's how things will evolve. And I think NFTs will actually play a big role in enabling the mass adoption of DAOs.
DAOs, anything on chain is going to be a little bit more difficult than doing things not on chain. And so we need the activation energy to get people sort of over that complexity. And it's entirely about interest. How do we get more people to participate in DAOs? My view is if it's going to be on chain, it's going to be a little bit more complicated than if it's not, and therefore we need activation energy to get folks to want to participate. It's all about interest. We're already starting to see whole new forms of DAOs coming up, whether like including DAOs for NFTs and collecting them. But imagine DAOs for fantasy football, right? People are super passionate about that, fantasy sports, and you can provide new classes of experiences and new classes of transparency by doing so. So my sense is the more DAOs that are out there covering more topics that are more inclusive for folks will drive participation.
Oh, more kids, more entrepreneurs basically saying, I'm all in the crypto sphere. I get the integration of the metaverse with crypto. Web 3.0 is all about new experiences that basically represent self-sovereign agency over what I own, my stuff, my data. And kids are going to intuitively get that. It's going to be hard to explain it to our grandparents, right? But it's going to be easy to explain it to them, and that next generation of entrepreneurs doesn't want to work at a Wall Street bank anymore. This is what they want to do.